Jerry Solie, and I was fortunate that I got to fish in Alaska for many summers. I had a lot of experiences there. I got to sport fish, I got to explore, and I wanted to share some of these experiences with my friends and relatives. So with the help of my good friend Jerry Solie and some of the old slides that I've taken, we put together this program. And I first became interested in Alaska when I was in junior high school. I had to give a book report, and it was about the young Alaskans. It was a book that it was adventures of these kids in Alaska in the early days, and it really stuck with me. I still remember the book, and as it turned out, I got to have my own adventure in 1957. I got to fish with my uncle Hawken Landy. We gill-netted Cook Inlet. I got to explore the west side of Cook Inlet. It was a big adventure. Alaska wasn't a state until 1959, and in 57 the total population of Alaska was only 208,000 people, about as many people that are in Everett and Marysville now. The experiences I had with hockey on the gill-net boat stuck with me. I never forgot about them. I wanted to go back to Alaska, and in 1980, I talked to my good friend Jerry Lang. We'd been hunting and fishing partners ever since we were little kids, and I said, Jerry, we ought to buy this permit. I found out about a permit, a set-net permit in Bristol Bay. We ought to buy that, be partners, and fly your airplane up there and go fishing. And we did. The summer of 1980, Jerry picked me up in Arlington, and we took off for Bristol Bay. And we didn't have any food, we didn't have a net, we didn't have anything. But I had a tent, and anyway, that first year was really exciting, and as it worked out over the years, we ended up buying another permit. I had a permit in my name, one in Jerry Lang's name, and then we bought another permit for my son Hans. Hans has ended up fishing for 36 years now. Bristol Bay set net fishing is using 50 fathom of net that's fished off of the beach. It's anchored at both ends, as opposed to the drift net fleet that fish from boats. We live on the beach. We built cabins there, and the drift netters, they stay on their boats. So anyway, fishing was good for us over the years. I had opportunity to have some of my friends up. Dick Padovan, we were in kindergarten together. He came up several times, and we sport fished together. Al Canaris, my Everett Junior College teacher, came up for several years, and we did a bird study on shorebirds. He was a parasitologist. He would go through their digestive tract. I would shoot the birds for him. I had quality time with my dad, my stepsons, my daughter Kathy, and it was very primitive. There was no TV, no newspapers. There was one radio station, but it was just good quality time that we had, and just enjoying the outdoors and fishing. I'm very thankful for all of the fun that I got to have, and I'm going to be 80 years old here in a couple of months, and I'm just really thankful that I had the opportunity to enjoy Alaska like I did. Thank you.
It's 1957, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm getting ready to board an airliner to fly to Kenai, Alaska, to meet with my Uncle Hawken to commercially gill-net salmon in Cook Inlet, south of Anchorage. Prior to the United States purchasing Alaska, it was owned by Russia. There are many early settlements in Alaska which were developed by Russians. I once visited a Russian Orthodox church built in Kenai, Alaska. Mount Iliamna looms in the background. Each day I'm watching the drift nets to see the corks go down. When the corks go down, salmon are in the net. It's important to retrieve the salmon in the nets before the seals get to them. Some of the highest tides in the world, approaching 40 feet, would leave Uncle Hawkins' boat high and dry while the seals below are sunning themselves on a sandbar. Up until 1959, canneries used fish traps similar to this one. In 1959, these traps were outlawed when Alaska became a state. When I first started fishing in Alaska, food was often scarce. It became necessary to hunt and fish in order to eat regularly. I'd hunt on the west side of Cook Inland and would need to carry a weapon for safety. I'd often hunt ptarmigan for food. Their plumage would change color from winter to summer, and bathing would only occur in a local stream. Jerry Lang and I made many trips to Alaska for our commercial fishing. Jerry's Cessna 182 wasn't a particularly good plane for landing in some of the more remote areas we traveled in Alaska. The view was often breathtaking on our trips and frankly dangerous at times. At first we had to fly all of our materials to Alaska in Jerry's 182 Cessna. Later we learned we could send our materials to Alaska on a barge out of Seattle. Since the fish buyers were bringing their things up this way, we never had to pay to get our stuff to a place called Big Creek, which wasn't too far from where we fished in south central Alaska. Once we had our materials on site, Jerry Lang and I started framing our modest cabin. Often bears would be nosing around our cabin at night while I slept in the tent next to the cabin being constructed. After about 6 years, we had put up 3 cabins at Igigik, Alaska. There are 2 kinds of commercial fishing in Alaska. They are drift net and set net fishing. Here in Bristol Bay, the fishing fleet is using drift nets at night. Each boat may have up to 900 feet of drift net fishing for sockeye salmon. Bristol Bay is the largest sockeye fishery in the world. The average catch is 29 million fish each season. Here is another type of salmon fishing. This is set net, which is anchored at each end. Nets are set fairly shallow in the water. Boats doing drift netting are required to be no longer than 32 feet in length. When commercial fishing, it's really important to have good, strong help. The Lang boys were just that. They worked for about 3 seasons for Jerry Lang and myself. They were both state wrestling champions for Oak Harbor High School. Shown here is Al Canaris, who was my Everett Junior College biology teacher. Al would accompany us each year to do his parasite study of Alaska migratory birds. He accompanied me to Alaska for 4 years and has remained a close friend to this day. Once fish are collected from the fishermen's nets, they are placed in totes and brought to the fish buyer shack where they are weighed. Fish are then placed on airplanes and shipped to Kodiak Island where they are processed. Note the 50, which is 50 cents per pound, that fishermen are paid. Here workers process sockeye salmon roe, which is salted, dried, and packed in wooden boxes to be sold in Japan at very high prices. When you're in Alaska, you're constantly aware of bears. These bears are Alaskan brown bears. They are the second largest carnivores in North America. Only polar bears are larger. This particular brown bear showed no fear as we flew over it in an attempt to scare it off. The pop cans in this photo were discovered by this bear, and he sat right outside our door and opened and drank 23 of the 24 cans in our case of pop. After drinking the pop, the same bear came back the following night and tried to get into our cabin. Note the size of the bear print paws in the sand. Wildlife is very abundant in Alaska. My business partner, Jerry Lang, is feeding a pair of ground squirrels. Bears love to dig these squirrels out of the tundra as a source of food. Other wildlife seen often included red fox and literally thousands of caribou traveling in a herd in search of food. The Igigik North Line fishery is the richest, shortest, most intense, competitive, and the most unpredictable salmon fishery in Alaska, and possibly the world. Occasionally, when sockeye salmon are returning to Bristol Bay, some of the 30 million fish fall out of the nets and end up on the beach wasted. Occasionally, we find other kinds of fish, including this boxfish. In order to maintain sockeye salmon runs, the Alaskan Department of Fisheries will make certain areas off limits to fishing. Here, hundreds of thousands of sockeye are hugging the entrance of the Igigik River on their return to spawn. This fishery has created some very unique types of watercraft. The first boat is a bow picker with twin diesel jet pumps which just skims across the surface of the water. The most unique boat, and probably the only one of its kind in the world, is Moby Duck, which can go on land or water to fish. My son Hans has fished in Alaska for 36 years. One year my daughter Kathy helped with our fishing operation. During my early years of commercial fishing in Alaska, large commercial aircraft were used to fly sockeye to processors. This often created a chaotic situation. There were no amenities such as air traffic controllers or a paved landing strip. Planes just flew in on the beach, were loaded up with the fish, and off they went to Kodiak, Alaska for processing. Some of these planes were huge for this type of landing on a beach. The largest I recall were Douglas DC-6s with 4 engines. This often created interesting situations. Occasionally a plane would crash or be seriously damaged while landing or taking off. In 1985, a fishing friend who was also a Bristol Bay set net fisherman had a 26-foot boat delivered to him by a C-119 airplane. This photo shows the boat being removed from the belly of the C-119. Unfortunately, on the very next day, his boat sank while trying to launch it. The surf was too rough and the water came over the bow and it sank. He never used the boat again. Flying in and out of Alaska could be very dangerous. On one trip while attempting to take off from Sitka Airfield, Jerry Lang forgot to put the oil cap back on the engine, and as we were attempting to take off, oil was spewing out of the engine all over the plane's windshield. We were barely able to stop the plane just at the end of the runway. Just as the plane stopped at the edge of the runway, the oil it spilled ignited on the engine's manifold. We were very lucky to put out the fire and then continue on our journey. Between the extreme tides, the rapid changes in the weather, and the excitement of fishing, accidents often occurred. In the history of Bristol Bay fishing, boats first used sails and oars. Then in 1951, Alaska sanctioned the use of engines. Shown here is the skeleton of a sailboat, and above is a Bryant fishing boat, which was made in Everett, Washington by the Mars Boat Company. Here, 3 fishermen are removing the oosic from a beached walrus. Right behind our cabin, the tundra would be in bloom in June and July. When not working, we would often explore. Jerry Lang is crossing the river on an air mattress. After Harlan Peterson blew the windows out of our cabin with an M1000, which was about the size of a quarter stick of dynamite, I put up a sign prohibiting fireworks. Looking out the window is Jerry Solie and Harlan Peterson. Togiak is the largest commercial herring roe fishery in Alaska. In 1993, I was gone for a month to participate in a 20-minute season. The fishery is very intense. There was only time for one net set. The fleet caught 17,000 tons of herring in 20 minutes. On days not commercial